In this week's Torah portion, we read of the miraculous splitting of the Red Sea. Verse 22 of the 14th chapter reads, "V'yavohu b'nei Yisrael b'toch hayam b'yabasha," that the children of Israel came into the water, into the sea, and it became dry land. However, there seems to be a discrepancy. If we look just a little bit later, chapter 14, verse 29, it says that they came into dry land, into the sea. Why the switch in wording? And to this, there is a beautiful interpretation brought forth by the Brisker Rebbe. You see, we know of these two characters that were troublemakers specifically to Moses. They were named Datan va'Aviram. Throughout the entire sojourn in the wilderness, they were nothing but a pain in his butt. Now, our sages tell us in the Midrash, and Rashi quotes it, that when Pharaoh heard that Moses came to redeem, he made their lives even more miserable for all the Jews. Beforehand, they were given bricks to build. Now they would have to make their own bricks and still hit the same quota. And he put Egyptian taskmen on top of them to make sure they did the work. But a little known fact that they also picked some Jews to be overseers for the work. These Jews were Datan and Aviram. Pharaoh had told them that should the Jewish people not complete their work, Datan and Aviram would be held responsible. They need to make sure they do the work. Datan and Aviram, even though they were somewhat atheists, they weren't the fullest believers, and even though they were skeptical of Moses throughout the entire time in the wilderness, when it came to it, rather than beat the other Jews to make sure that they did the work, they accepted that they themselves instead would get beaten by Egyptians, by Pharaoh, for failing in this regard. As a result, we ask the question, a lot of the Jews got left behind, 4/5, as we know, and actually died in the plague of darkness. However, we see Datan and Aviram later in the wilderness, so obviously they survived. However, our sages clearly state that they didn't cross with the Jewish people when they came through with the splitting of the sea. No, they came with Pharaoh later on, pursuing the Jews. And from this, the Brisker Rebbe tells us why the discrepancy in the two verses that we cited above. You see, by virtue of taking a beating for their brothers and sisters, even though there were, like we said, pains in the butt, they merited a miracle for themselves, a unique occurrence. They merited their own splitting of the sea. The other Jews came in and it was water, and once they came deep enough, that water turned into dry land, and therefore they walked forth on dry land with the Egyptians following behind. The Egyptians came and it was already dry land. They pursued them. And who were with them? Datan and Aviram. Therefore, we understand the second verse, that the Israelites came on dry land in the sea. This is alluding to Datan and Aviram. Whereas, eventually, the water came crushing down, and all the Egyptian soldiers got wiped away. Datan and Aviram were unique in that they too came with the soldiers on dry land. However, they also merited that water remained split just for them, and therefore they survived and eventually met up with the rest of the Jewish people later on. And this is a phenomenal lesson for us, especially today. There might be the case that there are Jews who are atheists. There might be the case that there are Jews that in fact serve as a pain in the butt to the religion of Judaism, to the people. However, even so, they are willing at the end of the day to take a beating for another Jew. And this, as we've just learned, is a great, great virtue. Something that God saw as so special, that merited a unique miracle just for these two men. And so too today, whether it be with Israeli soldiers that, despite, again, maybe not being so close to their religion, at the end of the day are willing to put their lives on the line for their brothers and sisters here.